Zainab stepped out of her white Mercedes-Benz with the confidence of someone who had never been told no in her entire life. The evening sun cast long shadows across the marble steps of the Grand Pavilion Hotel in Lagos, and she could see the golden lights twinkling through the tall windows like diamonds scattered across black velvet. She wore a crimson designer gown that had cost more than most people earned in 6 months, and her neck glowed with the brilliance of real diamonds. Every step she took echoed with the sound of expensive heels clicking against the polished marble. Her personal assistant, a young woman named Kayamika, followed 2 steps behind, carrying her designer purse and phone. Zainab had been looking forward to this charity gala for weeks. It was one of the most important events of the year in Lagos, where the rich and powerful gathered to be seen and to show off their wealth. She was not just any guest either. She was Zainab Adelik, the fiancée of Tunde Okafor, one of Nigeria's youngest billionaires. Tunde had made his fortune in the technology industry, and at just 32 years old, he controlled companies that employed thousands of people. Zainab was proud of this. She told everyone she met about her engagement to Tunde. His wealth had become her identity, and she wore it like the diamonds around her neck. As she climbed the steps toward the hotel entrance, a woman's voice called out to her. It was soft and gentle, with an accent that spoke of years spent far from the city's busy streets. Zainab turned slightly and saw an old woman standing at the bottom of the steps. The woman was holding a basket filled with flowers. Her clothes were patched and faded, worn thin from washing and wearing. Her feet were bare, and they were stained with the dust of Lagos's streets. Her face was deeply lined, with skin that looked like it had been baked by the sun for 100 years. But her smile was warm and genuine, and her eyes held a kindness that seemed to come from somewhere deep and true. This was Mama Chioma. She had been selling flowers on the streets of Lagos for nearly 40 years. She sold to office workers, to people visiting hospitals, to families celebrating small victories in their lives. Most people knew her and bought from her without hesitation. She was part of the fabric of Lagos, a familiar face that made people feel connected to something real and simple and good. Mama Chioma had seen Zainab coming from far away. She recognized the type of woman Zainab was. She had seen many like her before, beautiful women with hard hearts who had forgotten where they came from. Mama Chioma, who was wise in the ways of the world, decided to test this young woman. She walked forward slowly, moving as carefully as her old bones would allow, and held out her basket of flowers. The flowers were beautiful. There were white lilies that smelled like heaven, yellow roses that caught the fading sunlight like small suns, and pink carnations that looked soft as clouds. Mama Chioma had arranged them carefully that morning, thinking of the people who would see them and feel joy. She had prayed over them as she always did, asking that they bring happiness to whoever received them. "Beautiful flowers for a beautiful evening, my daughter," Mama Chioma said gently. Her voice was like honey, warm and sweet and true. "These flowers are fresh this morning. They will make your evening more beautiful." Zainab barely looked at the old woman. She glanced down with her nose slightly raised as though she had caught a bad smell. What she saw was not a person with a kind heart and a lifetime of dignity. What she saw was poverty. She saw someone who was poor, old, and irrelevant to her world. In Zainab's mind, poor people were invisible. They were part of the background like the buildings and the streets. They were not real people like her. "Get away from me," Zainab said sharply, taking a step backward. Her voice was cold like ice water. "Do not come near my dress. You will make it dirty." She wrinkled her nose and turned her face away as though the old woman had foul smell coming from her body. Several people who were standing nearby began to watch. They could feel something bad was about to happen. "I do not want your flowers," Zainab continued, her voice becoming louder and crueler. "Look at you. You are dirty and poor. You smell like dirt. This is a place for important people, not for beggars like you. You should not be here. You do not belong in a place like this." Mama Chioma stood still, holding out her flowers. She said nothing. She simply watched Zainab with those old, wise eyes. But Zainab was not finished. She wanted to hurt this woman. She wanted to make sure that everyone around them knew that she was better than this old beggar woman. She reached into her designer purse and pulled out a crumpled Naira note. It was money she had dropped on the floor somewhere and picked up without thinking. She held it between 2 fingers as though it was dirty and could contaminate her hands. "Here," Zainab said loudly so that everyone around could hear. "Take this money and go away. This is a place for people with value. People like me. Not people like you. You are nobody. You are nothing. You should be ashamed to even come here and bother important people like me." Then she did something that would stay with Mama Chioma forever. She threw the money down at the old woman's feet as though she was throwing trash to a dog. The crumpled note fell slowly to the ground and landed in the dust. Some of Zainab's friends laughed nervously. They were uncomfortable, but they did not want to upset Zainab. Other guests looked away, pretending they had not seen what happened. The security guard stood still, unsure what to do. Mama Chioma bent down slowly and picked up the money. Her old bones cracked as she moved. She picked up the crumpled note and held it in her hand. Then she looked up at Zainab, and her eyes were filled with something that might have been sadness or might have been pity. Mama Chioma spoke in Igbo, in a language that only a few people around understood. Her words were quiet, but they carried weight and meaning. She spoke of truth and consequences. She spoke of pride that comes before a fall. She spoke of the ancestors who watch and remember everything. When she finished speaking, she simply turned and walked away, her feet making no sound on the marble steps. Zainab watched her go, feeling a strange cold shiver run down her spine, as though someone had walked over her grave. But she pushed the feeling away. She turned to her friends and laughed loudly. "Did you hear how she spoke?" Zainab said. Probably cursing herself for being so poor and so ugly. But deep in her heart, Zainab felt something she could not name. It was fear, though she did not want to admit it. 3 days after the charity gala, Zainab woke up and immediately felt that something was wrong. She reached toward her bedside table where she always placed her engagement ring before going to sleep. The ring was not there. She sat up quickly, her heart beginning to beat faster. The diamond ring that Tund had given her was worth 10 million naira. It was not just valuable because of its cost. It was valuable because it represented her entire future. It was the proof that she was going to marry one of Nigeria's richest men. Without that ring, she felt like she was disappearing. Zainab got out of bed and searched everywhere in her penthouse apartment. She looked on the bathroom counter where she usually washed her hands before bed. The ring was not there. She searched in the bedroom, looking under the bed and inside the drawers. She searched in the kitchen, thinking maybe she had taken it off while cooking. She searched in the living room, moving cushions and looking between the furniture. 2 hours later, Zainab had searched every room in her apartment 3 times. The ring had simply vanished. She called the security company that protected her building. She demanded to know if anyone had entered her apartment while she slept. The security guard told her that no one had entered. The alarm system had not been triggered. The doors had remained locked all night. This made Zainab feel even more afraid. How could the ring disappear if no one had entered her apartment? For 2 days, Zainab could think of nothing else. She called Tund and told him that she had lost the ring, but she did not tell him the truth. She told him that she had taken it off to clean it and had accidentally dropped it in the sink, and it had gone down the drain. Tund was upset, but he said he would buy her a new one. He was too busy with work to worry about it for long. Then, for days after the ring disappeared, Zainab opened her refrigerator to get some juice, and there was the ring. It was sitting on the top shelf, wrapped carefully in plastic as though someone had placed it there deliberately. Zainab's hands began to shake. She pulled the ring out and looked at it carefully. It was definitely her ring. But how had it gotten into her freezer? She lived alone. Her apartment was locked. No one had a key except Tund, and he had been in meetings in Abuja all week. A cold feeling began to settle into Zainab's chest. She thought about Mama Chioma. She thought about the old woman's words spoken in Igbo. She told herself that it was impossible. Curses were not real. Magic was not real. These were things that old, uneducated people believed in. But even as she told herself this, she could not stop feeling afraid. The next morning, everything became much worse. Zainab woke up to thousands of notifications on her phone. Her Instagram account, which had over 2 million followers, was being flooded with comments and messages. She opened the app with trembling fingers and her heart stopped. Photographs were being posted to her account. Intimate photographs. Photographs of her with men who were not Tund. Photographs from her past, from before she had met him. Photographs that she had taken years ago and had deleted from her phone. In some of the photographs she was wearing almost nothing. In others she was kissing men whose names she could barely remember. In still others she was at parties, drinking alcohol, her eyes half closed, her smile wild and reckless. The comments poured in like a flood. People were calling her names. They were saying she was a liar and a cheater. They were saying she did not deserve to be with Tund. They were sharing the photographs with their own followers, spreading them across the internet like a disease. Zainab felt sick. She tried to delete the photographs, but more kept appearing. The account was not responding to her commands. It was as though someone else had taken control of it completely. She called her social media manager in panic. The manager said that her account had been hacked by someone very skilled. The person who had done this had left no trace for them to follow. It would take days to regain control of the account, and by then the damage would already be done. By the end of that day, the photographs had been seen by over 50 million people. Major brands that had sponsored Zainab immediately ended their contracts with her. A modeling agency that had offered her a lucrative deal for the next 3 years sent her a message saying they were no longer interested. Fashion designers stopped responding to her calls. The influencer status that had taken her 5 years to build was destroyed in a single day. That night, Tun called her. His voice was different. It was cold and hard, like a voice she had never heard before. "What is this?" he asked, not saying hello or asking how she was. "What are these photographs?" "Tun, I can explain," Zainab began, but her voice cracked with fear and desperation. "Don't," he said sharply, cutting her off. "I don't want to hear it. I received an anonymous email this morning with evidence that you have been unfaithful to me. Multiple times. With multiple men. There are photographs, dates, hotel receipts. Everything. And I also received bank statements showing that you have been stealing money from my business accounts. 50 million naira, Zainab. You have stolen 50 million naira from me." Zainab tried to speak, but no words came out. "I want you to move out of the penthouse," Tun continued, his voice like ice. "I will have my lawyer contact you tomorrow. We are finished. I never want to see you again." He hung up the phone. Zainab sat in the darkness of her apartment, unable to move, unable to think. Everything was falling apart. Her engagement was over. Her career was destroyed. Her reputation was ruined. And she had no one to blame but herself. She had humiliated an old woman for no reason except that the woman was poor and Zainab was cruel. And now the old woman had brought darkness into Zainab's life. Over the next 2 weeks, things became even worse. Zainab's car broke down on the highway and had to be towed. The apartment's water pipes burst, flooding her belongings and causing thousands of naira in damage. Her bank accounts were frozen by the government for a security review. Her closest friends stopped answering her calls. When she ran into people she knew at the mall, they pretended not to see her and hurried away quickly. Zainab spent her nights awake in a hotel room, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Mama Chioma's whispered words in Igbo. She had no one to talk to. She had no one to help her. She was completely alone. And for the first time in her life, Zainab understood what it felt like to have nothing. She understood what it felt like to be invisible, just like Mama Chioma had been invisible to her at the gala. She had finally accepted the truth. The old woman had cursed her. And Zainab had no idea how to make it stop. For 3 weeks, Zainab lived in fear and confusion. She had lost everything that mattered to her. Her wealth was gone. Her beauty could not help her anymore. Her friends had disappeared like smoke. She had nothing left except the desperate belief that if she could find Mama Chioma and ask for forgiveness, maybe the old woman would undo whatever she had done. Maybe the curse would be lifted. Maybe Zainab's life could go back to normal. She knew very little about where Mama Chioma lived. She only remembered that the old woman had been selling flowers outside the charity gala, which meant she probably lived somewhere nearby in Lagos. Zainab asked around carefully, not wanting anyone to know that she was searching for an old beggar woman. Eventually, a market woman told her that an old flower seller named Mama Chioma lived in the Makoko slums, in a small compound near the water. The taxi driver looked at Zainab strangely when she asked him to take her to the Makoko slums. He asked her several times if she was sure. She was dressed in clothes that were still expensive, though worn and faded from weeks of worry. She stuck out in the slums like a diamond in a pile of dirt. But Zainab gave the driver money and insisted that he take her there. As they drove deeper into the slums, the city began to change around her. The wide roads became narrow streets. The tall buildings became small houses made of corrugated metal and plastic sheets. The air began to smell different, like smoke and waste, and many people living very close together. Children ran barefoot between the houses, playing games with sticks and old tires. Women sat outside their homes, braiding hair and talking and watching the world go by. Men stood in groups, drinking palm wine and telling stories. Everyone seemed to know everyone else. Everyone seemed to have a place where they belonged. But Zainab did not belong here. She felt the eyes of the people watching her as the taxi moved slowly through the streets. She felt their curiosity and maybe their judgment. What was a woman like her doing in a place like this? When they reached the address the market woman had given her, Zainab paid the taxi driver and got out. The compound was small, with a blue-painted door that had faded to the color of old sky. There was no fence around it, just open space where a few chickens were scratching in the dirt. An old woman was sitting on a woven mat outside the door, grinding herbs with a mortar and pestle. The smell of the herbs was strong and green, like plants and earth and old medicine. It was Mama Chioma. For a moment, Zainab could not move. She stood at the edge of the compound, looking at the old woman who had destroyed her life. Mama Chioma looked up from her work and saw her. There was no surprise in her eyes. It was as though she had been expecting Zainab to come. Zainab's legs felt weak. She walked forward slowly, and when she reached Mama Chioma, she fell to her knees in the dirt. She did not care that her expensive clothes were getting dirty. She did not care that people were watching from their houses. She fell to her knees and began to cry. "Mama, please," Zainab said, her voice broken and desperate. "Please forgive me. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what I said to you. I'm sorry for humiliating you in front of all those people. I'm sorry for being cruel to you. Please take back what you have done. I will give you anything you want. I will give you money. I will give you everything I have. Just please make it stop. Please make my life go back to normal." Mama Chioma set down her mortar and pestle. She looked at Zainab for a long time, studying her face carefully, looking into her eyes as though she was reading her soul. Then she spoke. "Come, child. Sit with me." Her voice was gentle, without anger or cruelty. It was the same kind voice that she had used when offering flowers at the gala. Zainab sat down on the mat across from the old woman. She was still crying, her shoulders shaking. "Do you know who I am?" Mama Chioma asked. Zainab shook her head. "I am the mother of Adeyemi Okafor," the old woman said slowly. "I am the grandmother of your fiancé Tund Okafor. I am his blood, his family, the woman who gave birth to his mother. I am his connection to his ancestors and to his past." Zainab's breath caught in her throat. She had never heard Tund mention his grandmother. She did not even know that Tund had a grandmother alive. "When my grandson became rich," Mama Chioma continued, her voice sad, "he became ashamed of me. He said that I embarrassed him. He told his friends that his mother was dead. He said his family was poor and had nothing. He told everyone that he came from nothing and built himself up. But that was a lie. He came from me. He came from a family that loved him and cared for him. When he became rich, he forgot all of that. He forgot where he came from. He forgot me." Mama Chioma paused and looked out toward the water, where boats were moving slowly through the channels. "For 5 years he did not visit me. He did not call me. He did not send me money to help me. He acted as though I did not exist. So I decided to come to the streets and sell flowers. I wanted to see what it felt like to be invisible. I wanted to understand what happens to people when the world forgets them." Zainab listened carefully to every word. She was beginning to understand. "That night at the gala," Mama Chioma said, turning back to look at Zainab, "I was testing you, child. I was testing whether you loved my grandson for his good heart or for his money. I was testing whether you had kindness in your soul or cruelty. When you humiliated me in front of all those people, when you threw money at my feet like I was an animal, you showed me the truth about who you are. You showed me that your heart is dark." Mama Chioma's eyes were sad but not angry. "So I did something," she continued. "I did not curse you, child. I do not have the power to curse anyone. What I did was I removed my spiritual protection from you. I asked the ancestors to step back and let the truth be revealed. And the truth came out naturally, like water finding its way through cracks in a stone." Zainab's mind was spinning. "What do you mean? What truth?" "The truth about who you are," Mama Chioma said simply. "The photographs that were leaked, the money that was stolen, the infidelity, these things are all real, are they not? You did these things. You lied to my grandson. You took his money. You were unfaithful to him. These are not things that I made happen. These are things that you did. I simply removed the protection that was hiding these things from the world." Zainab felt her face grow hot. She realized that everything Mama Chioma was saying was true. She had stolen the money. She had been unfaithful. She had lied. Tund had found evidence of these things because they were real, not because of a curse. "I understand now," Zainab whispered. "Do you?" Mama Chioma asked. "Do you understand that the universe has a way of revealing truth? That you cannot hide darkness forever? That your actions have consequences?" Zainab nodded, tears still streaming down her face. "Then perhaps there is still hope for you, child," Mama Chioma said. "Perhaps you can still change." Mama Chioma stood up slowly from the woven mat, her old bones making small cracking sounds as she moved. She walked to the blue door of her small house and disappeared inside. Zainab sat alone on the mat, her mind racing, trying to understand everything that had just been said to her. She felt as though the ground beneath her had shifted, and nothing was solid anymore. A few minutes later, Mama Chioma returned carrying a wooden box. The box was old and worn, made from dark wood that had been polished smooth by many years of handling. She set the box down on the mat between them and opened it slowly. Inside were papers and photographs and documents. Mama Chioma reached into the box and pulled out a stack of bank statements. She handed them to Zainab silently. Zainab looked at them with shaking hands. The statements showed transfers of money from Tun's business accounts to accounts that Zainab recognized as her own. There were dozens of transfers. 50 million naira in total. The dates on the statements showed that these transfers had been happening for over a year. Zainab felt sick. She remembered doing this. She remembered thinking that Tun would never notice. She remembered telling herself that he was so rich that the money would not matter to him. But seeing it written down on official documents made it real in a way that her memories could not. Mama Chioma reached into the box again and pulled out more papers. These were photographs. She spread them out on the mat for Zainab to see. They were photographs of Zainab with different men. In some, she was holding their hands. In others, she was kissing them. The photographs had dates on them, and they were all from times when she was supposed to be faithful to Tund. There were photographs from hotel rooms. There were photographs from restaurants. There were photographs from cars. Each one showed Zainab being unfaithful to the man she had promised to marry. These are from the past year, Mama Chioma said quietly. I have been watching you, child. I wanted to understand why you were the way you were. I wanted to see if there was any goodness in your heart. But everywhere I looked, I found only darkness and lies. Zainab could not speak. She could not defend herself because everything that Mama Chioma was showing her was true. Next, Mama Chioma pulled out a large folder filled with papers. Inside were documents about Zainab's background. There were birth certificates, school records, and employment history. Mama Chioma showed her that Zainab had lied about where she came from. She had told Tun that her father was a successful businessman, but the documents showed that her father was a taxi driver. She had told Tun that she had gone to a private university, but the documents showed that she had never finished high school. She had told Tun that she was from a wealthy family, but the documents showed that she came from a poor neighborhood in Surulere. None of these things were bad in themselves. Many people came from poor backgrounds and worked hard to build better lives for themselves. But Zainab had not worked hard. She had lied. She had pretended to be someone she was not. She had used her beauty to trap Tund and take his money. I have gathered all of this information, Mama Chioma said, closing the folder carefully. I did not do this to hurt you, child. I did this because I needed to know the truth. And now I am going to show all of this to my grandson. He deserves to know who you really are. Zainab stood up suddenly. No, Mama. Please, do not do that. I will do anything. I will pay you money. I will. But Mama Chioma shook her head. Money is not what I want from you, child. What I want is for you to face the consequences of your actions. What I want is for truth to be revealed. The next morning, Zainab found herself standing outside Tun's office building. She had not wanted to come, but Mama Chioma had insisted. The old woman was with her, carrying the wooden box of documents. They rode the elevator up to the top floor of the building, where Tun's office was located. When they entered his office, Tun looked up from his desk. He saw his grandmother first, and his face registered confusion and then shame. He had not seen her in 5 years. He stood up quickly, not knowing what to say. Hello, my grandson, Mama Chioma said. I have brought you something you need to see. She set the wooden box on his desk and opened it. She showed him the bank statements. She showed him the photographs. She showed him the documents about Zainab's background. She did not say anything. She let the documents speak for themselves. Tun's face changed as he looked through the evidence. His expression moved from confusion to shock to anger to a kind of cold, bitter sadness. When he finished looking through everything, he sat down slowly in his chair. Is this true? He asked Zainab, though he already knew the answer. Zainab tried to speak, but no words came out. She nodded. Tund looked away from her. He could not even bear to look at her face. His voice when he spoke was cold and hard like metal. Get out of my office, he said quietly. Tund, please, Zainab said. I can explain. I was young and stupid. I made mistakes. But I love you. Do not speak, Tund said, still not looking at her. Do not say another word. You have lied to me. You have stolen from me. You have betrayed me in every possible way. You are not the person I thought you were. You are not the person you pretended to be. You are a liar and a thief and a woman with no honor. He pressed a button on his phone and spoke to his secretary. Call security. I want this woman removed from the building immediately. and contact my lawyer. I want her to receive a notice about the theft. She needs to understand the legal consequences of what she has done. Zainab felt her legs grow weak. This was really happening. This was the end. You have 24 hours to move out of the penthouse, Tun continued. Everything in that apartment belongs to me. You will take only your personal clothes and nothing else. If you take anything else, I will have you arrested. He turned to his grandmother. Grandmother, I am sorry. I am sorry that I abandoned you. I am sorry that I was ashamed of you. But I see now that you were trying to teach me something important. You were trying to show me that character is more important than wealth. Thank you for bringing this woman's true nature into the light. Mama Chioma nodded, her old face showing both sadness and satisfaction. You have learned a hard lesson, my grandson. But it is a lesson you needed to learn. 2 security guards came into the office and escorted Zainab out. As she walked down the hallway, she could hear Tun's voice behind her, talking to his grandmother. He was asking for her forgiveness. He was asking if she would let him take care of her from now on. Zainab realized in that moment that her own darkness had destroyed everything. It had not been a curse at all. It had been the simple truth coming out. And she had no one to blame but herself. Zainab stood alone in the penthouse apartment that had once been her home. The security guards had left her there to gather her things, but they were waiting downstairs to make sure she did not steal anything. She looked around at the expensive furniture, the marble floors, the crystal chandeliers that hung from the ceiling like frozen tears. None of it belonged to her anymore. None of it had ever really belonged to her. She had only been borrowing someone else's life, pretending to be someone she was not. She packed a small suitcase with her clothes and walked downstairs. The guards checked it carefully before letting her leave. As she walked out of the building into the bright Lagos sunlight, she felt like a ghost, invisible and unwanted. She had nowhere to go. She had no money. She had no friends. She had nothing. For 3 days, Zainab slept in different hotels, using the last of her savings. But eventually her money ran out. She found herself sitting on a bench in Lekki, watching people walk by with their lives and their purposes and their families. She thought about what Mama Chioma had said about the universe revealing truth. She thought about how she had destroyed her own life with her lies and her greed and her cruelty. On the 4th day, Zainab made a decision. She took a taxi to the Makoko slums, to the small compound with the blue door. She did not have a plan. She did not have money. She did not have anything to offer except the truth about who she was and a desperate desire to change. When she arrived at Mama Chioma's house, the old woman was sitting on her mat again, grinding herbs. She looked up and saw Zainab, and there was no surprise in her eyes. It was as though she had been expecting this moment. Mama, Zainab said, kneeling down on the ground in front of the old woman. I have nowhere to go. I have no money. I have no one. I have come to ask you to let me stay with you. I want to work for you. I want to take care of you. I want to spend the rest of my life trying to become a better person. I do not expect you to forgive me. I do not expect anything from you. I just want a chance to change. Mama Chioma looked at Zainab carefully. She studied the young woman's face, looking for signs of honesty or deception. She looked into her eyes, searching for truth. If you stay, Mama Chioma said slowly, you will work hard. You will cook for me. You will clean my house. You will help me sell flowers in the street. You will receive no payment except food and a place to sleep. You will live a simple life, not the life of luxury you have known. Are you ready for this? Yes, Mama, Zainab said. I am ready. And you will also repay the money you stole from my grandson, Mama Chioma continued. Every naira. Even if it takes you 10 years. Even if it takes you your whole life. Do you understand? Yes, Mama. I understand. Mama Chioma nodded slowly. Then you may stay. Those 2 years changed Zainab in ways she could never have imagined. Every morning she woke up before dawn and cleaned Mama Chioma's small house. She swept the floor and washed the dishes and organized the old woman's belongings. She cooked simple meals with vegetables and rice and beans. She learned to cook the way Mama Chioma's own daughter had cooked, with love and care and intention. Then every day she and Mama Chioma would go to the market to buy fresh flowers. They would arrange the flowers carefully, the way Mama Chioma had taught her. And then they would spend their days on the streets, selling flowers to anyone who would buy them. Some days they earned enough money to buy dinner. Some days they earned very little. But Zainab did not complain. She was grateful for every naira she earned. Every night, Zainab would sit down and put money into a savings account. She had opened a bank account in her own name, and she was saving every naira she earned to repay Tun for the theft. It was slow progress. Some months she could only save 5,000 naira. But she was determined. She had made a promise to herself and to Mama Chioma, and she was going to keep it. During those 2 years, something changed inside Zainab. The hard edges of her heart began to soften. The lies she had told herself began to crumble away. She began to understand what it meant to be kind. She began to understand what it meant to work hard for things. She began to understand that true wealth was not diamonds or designer clothes or expensive apartments. True wealth was knowing who you were. True wealth was being able to look at yourself in the mirror and see someone you respected. The people in the Makoko slums began to know her. They began to call her by name. They began to smile when they saw her coming down the street with her basket of flowers. Children would run up to her and ask her questions. Old women would sit with her and tell her stories about their lives. She became part of the community, a real person with a real life, not just a beautiful face and an empty heart. After 18 months of working and saving, Zainab had repaid 30 million naira to Tund. She still had 20 million more to go, but she was not discouraged. She knew it was possible. She knew that if she kept working and kept saving, she would eventually repay every naira. One day Mama Chioma asked her to sit down. The old woman's face was serious. "I have something to tell you," Mama Chioma said. "I have been watching you for these 18 months. I have seen you work hard. I have seen you serve others without complaining. I have seen you become honest. I have seen you become kind. I believe that you have truly changed." Zainab felt tears come to her eyes. "I am going to do something," Mama Chioma continued. "I am going to forgive you for what you did to me. And I am going to ask my grandson to forgive you as well. But this does not mean that everything will go back to the way it was. Your relationship with Tund must be built on a new foundation. It must be built on honesty and respect, not on wealth and beauty." Mama Chioma placed her old hand on Zainab's head and spoke words in Igbo, words of blessing and protection. She blessed Zainab's journey. She blessed her new life. She prayed that the ancestors would watch over her and guide her. The next week Mama Chioma took Zainab to see Tund. He was shocked to see Zainab and at first he was angry. But Mama Chioma explained everything. She explained how Zainab had worked for 2 years without payment. She explained how Zainab was repaying the stolen money. She explained how Zainab had changed. Tund listened carefully. He looked at Zainab and he saw that she was different. She was thin from hard work. Her hands were calloused from working. Her clothes were simple and worn. She was not wearing makeup. She was not wearing jewelry. She was simply herself, honest and real. "I do not expect you to forgive me," Zainab said to Tund. "I do not expect you to trust me. But I wanted you to know that I have changed. I wanted you to know that I am sorry for what I did to you." Tund was quiet for a long time. Then he spoke. "I believe you," he said. "I can see that you have changed. But we cannot go back to what we were. That time is finished. However, I can offer you something else. I can offer you forgiveness. And perhaps, with time we can build something new. Something based on honesty instead of lies." Over the next months, Tund began to spend time with Zainab again. But it was different now. They would talk for hours about their lives and their dreams and their mistakes. Tund began to see Zainab not as the beautiful woman he had wanted to marry, but as a real person who had suffered and learned and changed. 2 years after Zainab began working for Mama Chioma, she had repaid all 50 million naira. Tund accepted the final payment and when he did, he asked Zainab a question. "Will you marry me?" he asked. "Not because I want to show you off to the world. Not because I want to display your beauty. But because I love who you have become. Because I believe that we can build a real life together based on truth." Zainab said yes. But this time she said yes with a clean heart and honest intentions. At the wedding, Mama Chioma sat in the front row, her old face glowing with joy. She had taught both her grandson and the woman who had humiliated her the most important lesson of all. She had shown them that character is more valuable than wealth. She had shown them that honesty is more precious than diamonds. She had shown them that true love cannot be built on lies and deception, but only on truth and respect and genuine care for another person's soul. Zainab wore a simple white dress at her wedding, not a designer gown. The ceremony was held in a small church in the slums, surrounded by the people who had become her real community. As she walked down the aisle toward Tund, she felt more beautiful than she had ever felt in all her years of expensive clothes and jewelry and lies. She had finally understood that true wealth comes not from money or beauty or status. True wealth comes from knowing yourself. True wealth comes from honesty and integrity and the respect of good people. True wealth comes from the love of family and community and from living a life that matters.